Without further ado, we're pleased to introduce you to our first guest, Steve Saretsky. So Steve Saretsky is a Vancouver realtor and author behind one of Vancouver's most popular real estate newsletters. His dedication to analyzing stats, financial markets, and policies have allowed him to build a successful business among the top 1%. Thanks for being with us today.
Good to be here.
Awesome.
Good turnout.
I have to ask, what have you been up to lately? I haven't seen you in a while.
Just got back from Mexico last night, so
Okay.
bear with me here. Just getting my bearings underneath me, but should be fun. Yeah, compete. It's surprising in this housing market as well. Kind of a weird thing just a roller coaster right now, as it continues to be.
You have a very successful podcast, the Loonie Hour. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. A labor of love. Yeah, for anyone that's listened, it's been fun and quite the journey.
Are there any interesting personalities or spicy topics that you've been speaking on lately in there?
I think just the theme really over the last 12 months has just been central banks. Trying to get into the heads of central banks and figure out what the next move is, as everybody's trying to figure out inflation. And I think that's really going to dictate a lot of the direction for housing. So trying to figure out the macro, as always.
Absolutely. The biggest question, of course, that I'm sure you saw coming, how are sales going this year?
It's weird. I think everybody talks about this really active housing market, and it's a strange market because if you look at sales are running at their lowest levels since 2009. But then you've got new listings running at 23-year lows for the month of January. Wow. So I think the biggest thing coming into this year was the discussions towards the end of last year where, listen, mortgage rates are way up. They're in the fives. People are struggling with their variable rate mortgages. Everyone's going to start foreclosing. And so they're going to see this wave of distressed sellers hitting the market. And, here we are in January, 23-year low. So yeah. I don't know who had that on their bingo card coming into this year.
And you had spoken in past about low sales volume. That's still the general sentiment. Are you seeing any changes?
I think sales are trying to pick up. I think there's definitely some demand out there, maybe more demand that I'm surprised that people are willing to compete in this market. Again, we saw mortgage rates in the 5.5. They came back down to 4.8. Now they're going back up again because there's another potential inflation scare. And people are like, well, I don't really care. I'll compete with 10 other people in this single family house for $1.9 million.
Still.
It's surprising. I think really right now it's a housing market that's starved of inventory. And so because of that, prices are definitely firming up.
You've also been one to speak about the increasing wealth gap. Share a bit about that.
Well, I was chatting with my good friends at Strand here earlier. I think the demand for rental housing, especially in these expensive metropolitan cities, is going to continue. I think that the home ownership rate has peaked and will continue to decline. I think that's just the reality. I think that we have blown a massive wealth gap. Housing is out of reach, obviously, particularly for the younger generation, and they'll go into the rental market. So, secured rental housing, I think, is a good thing. It's something we desperately need. So, kudos to Strand there. Not that they need another plug, but that's my opinion.
Any change in buyer profiles as of this year?
I think the biggest buyer profile, like the people that are transacting today, the strongest segment is young families. I think that there is that missing middle, which is, if you're a young family and you've got, a kid, 2 kids, it's either you're going into a 2-bedroom condo in a high-rise building or you're going into a single-family house. And so we're starting to add a few more duplexes. We're starting to add a few more townhouses. But the reality is you got all these young families with, the millennials are starting to have children now, and they still want that single-family house. And there's, we don't build new single-family housing in Vancouver, so that supply continues to contract every single year. And I think that's putting an immense pressure on the single family. And that's why people are competing still today with mortgage rates in the 5s. People are still competing for entry-level single-family houses under $2 million.
That's crazy. I was going to ask you about product type, but you just responded. So
there you go.
What is the Saretsky forecast for 2023?
Confusion. I think that my personal view is I think given where rates are at, if you run the numbers through a mortgage calculator, I think prices should still fall. I mean, I think borrowing capacity's dropped by close to 30%. Prices have not fallen 30%.
No.
I don't think they're going to, but logically, I think that prices should come down. Now, the problem is, again, you have no inventory. Mm-hmm. Why would any seller cut their price?
think
no
a lot of people are
competition.
still waiting on the sidelines, hoping that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so they're waiting and waiting and waiting. So I think that I think we're gonna have a year of volatility. I think that everyone's trying to figure out, is inflation gone? Is it gonna come? Could it come back in 2024? I think that governments are still, spending a lot of money, and that's certainly inflationary. So they're kind of fighting central banks, and I think that's the big thing. Is I think volatility.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve. We'll chat again later.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.